The next step to take goes hand in hand with the expansion of comic books outside of the direct market. More children need to be drawn to reading comic books in order to establish a reliable fan base, and a wider diversity of readers overall has to be achieved. I spent almost this entire paper explaining how much comics have evolved into an adult medium, but this unfortunately came at a price. As the average age of comic book readers has increased, the comics being published have largely become more mature to keep up with the readers. But little has been done to preserve the state of comics that appeal mainly to children. Comic books being made exclusively for adults is no less ridiculous a situation than comic books being made only for kids. The power of the form is in the fact that it can support stories that appeal to all ages. There are some comic books out there that are very suitable for children, but these are too few and far between. And as mentioned, the direct market has made it far too difficult for children to locate them. Getting these books out into child-friendly markets like toy stores and the children's section of bookstores would go a long way in getting kids interested in comic books again. In recent years, many people have blamed the decline of the comic book industry on video games and the internet, insinuating that children simply don't want to read anymore. The Harry Potter phenomenon disproves this notion. If there's good enough material out there for children, they will read it. The advance of other media does play a role in children's declining literacy, but it is far from being the only culprit. I think that the fact that there's relatively little quality literature for children in any medium is more damaging in this respect, as well as the disparity between marketing that goes into other entertainment and that which is applied to reading. Children respond well to written media that engages them and doesn't talk down to them. For a long time, a great many comic books did exactly that, and the form hasn't lost the potential to do so again. Getting children to read comic books is crucial to the industry's survival. If the current group of readers simply keeps aging and is never replenished, who will the publishers be selling their comics to in a generation or two? Part of the problem has been that so many of the big icons in comics, like Batman and Spider-Man, have been around so long that there's far too much continuity tied to them. There are also too many separate audiences clamoring for stories. It's very difficult for a comic to appeal to a very young child and still keep teenagers and adults interested. By the same token, a child would quickly become very bored with a story that dealt with more adult topics and continued through several issues. Comics have been too heavily skewed in favor of one audience or the other, with little overlap. Marvel's Ultimate line is an admirable attempt at recapturing a youthful audience and still keeping the original continuity in place for an older crowd. But it is aimed more at teenagers than young children. I suggest a three-tiered approach for the major publishers to follow. With iconic characters like Marvel and DC's stables, different versions of the characters could be used on each level. Every other entertainment form has a similar sort of tier structure separating the kids stuff from the adult material, but comic books tend to be put under the same umbrella with only scattered warnings of mature content. Tiers such as these exist to a degree, but are rarely marketed as such or distinguished from one another. A more rigid system would be a great improvement and would serve to broaden audiences if combined with wider distribution. The first tier would consist of titles like DC's animated line, stories aimed at very young children, free of continuity and adult themes. These stories are generally entertaining with no baggage. The second tier would be comparable to most of Marvel's Ultimate line, and those titles at DC which feature teenage characters. The titles feature ongoing storylines, but don't rely upon decades of history. The third level would be analogous to Marvel and DC's current core line of titles. Stories contain more mature themes and character development than younger reader counterparts. Lines like Vertigo and Max would be a subset of this tier.